This is the American Library Association. On April 24th, 2023, the ALA released a list of the top 13 most challenged books of 2022. And the day before, CBS Sunday Mornings was on the case and helped make a propaganda piece about it.
It's a trend you've no doubt read about, the growing list of books banned in our nation's classrooms and libraries.
There is nuance missing here. Jane Pauley is saying libraries when she should be saying school libraries, because this trend is about questionable material popping up in K-12 schools.
The American Library Association will announce the most challenged books of 2022. Yes, race, controversial aspects of history, vulgarity, and violence may be red flags found in a number of books already challenged or banned, but sex and gender are now overwhelmingly the subject matter being attacked. Between 2020 and 2022, the number of individual titles challenged spiked more than 1,100%.
Notice that the graphic says 2,571 individual titles banned. That is a lie, because according to the American Library Association, that's the number of unique titles challenged, not banned. And according to Deborah Caldwell Stone, the director of the American Library Association's Office of Intellectual Freedom, the ALA doesn't know exactly how many challenges from parents actually result in books being banned,
rather than simply evaluating the book and placing it back on the shelf.
So is it a 1% increase, 50%? Well, the ALA isn't telling. In fact, they do not provide a list of the 2,571 challenged titles. And since they refuse to show their work, you have every right to be skeptical and believe that the number is inflated.
We're seeing about half of these challenges result in outright bans or restrictions that prevent the reader from reading it. That could mean moving a book in the children's section or the young adult section to the adult section.
Listen to what the ALA is saying here. They are very concerned when books, which are not meant to be read by children, are moved out of the children's section.
Placing restrictions like parental consent rules on the book.
The ALA is saying it's a restriction when a child needs a parent's permission to read a book. And you see where this story is going, right? Evil religious nut parent groups, like those Moms for Liberty over there, they're just trying to keep your kids from learning.
What kinds of books do you want in schools, in libraries?
Books that educate children.
That's a generalization that
Books that don't have pornography in them. Let's start there. Let's just put the bar really, really low. Books that don't have incest, pedophilia, rape.
Stop it! Talk about Orwellian.
That is one crazy edit, right? The founders of Moms for Liberty are like, let's not show kids sexy adult content. And the reaction is, stop it! That's Orwellian.
Stop it!
And this lunatic, by the way, is cartoonist Art Spiegelman, who is big mad because one of his books is supposedly being banned in schools.
Spiegelman has been speaking out ever since the McMinn County, Tennessee School Board voted unanimously last year to ban Maus, his Pulitzer Prize-winning graphic novel about the Holocaust, citing violence, profanity, and because of this image, nudity.
But that image is also of someone who just unalived themselves in the bathtub, but whatever. And more importantly, Mira Teichner is lying about Maus being banned because it wasn't. What did happen is that the McMinn County School Board removed it from its curriculum, which means that it's not part of class lessons and isn't part of the academic content taught in the school. However, it's still available in McMinn County high school libraries. Not to mention that you could go to a public library if you're that desperate to read it. And since when are graphic novels required reading in schools? What's next? Watchmen? The Dark Knight Returns?
I think it's possible for an adult to say, I don't want my kid reading that book in class, but to forbid the other kids from reading it or taking it out of the library, that's not liberty. That's suppression and authoritarianism.
So if a parent or school board doesn't think that your self-indulgent graphic novel should be read in a classroom, That's suppression and authoritarianism. Got it. And that brings us back to the list of the top 13 most challenged books of 2022. First, there's This Book is Gay by Juno Dawson, formerly James Dawson. According to the ALA, the book is being challenged because of LGBTQIA+ content, providing sexual education, and is claimed to be sexually explicit. Here is part of the book's description. This candid, funny, and uncensored exploration of sexuality and what it's like to grow up LGBTQ also includes real stories from people across the gender and sexual spectrums, not to mention hilarious illustrations. And according to the book's publisher, this uncensored exploration of sexuality is for LGBTQIA teens, tweens, and adults. The book contains topics like the in and outs of gay sex, why are gay men so slutty, and how sex apps work. You know, perfect content for a tween. And even though the book is a literal instruction manual on how to have sex, the ALA puts in the reasons for this book being challenged is that it's claimed to be sexually explicit. Notice the wording here, claimed to be explicit. This is supposed to paint the people challenging these books as nut jobs and sow doubt in their intelligence with the public at large. These stupid parents are simply overreacting. Let freedom read. But spoiler alert, most if not all of the books on this list are objectively explicit and are not suitable for children. The ALA can't even be honest. Look, if you're an adult and you want to read it, go for it. But to make the argument that this should be part of any K-12 school library is pretty vile. In fact, in an interview with Rolling Stone, the author is quoted as saying, "We're all very clear, This Book is Gay is not for children. This is a book kept in the young adult section, like a lot of the books that are on those banned book lists." So a few things here. The author said that the book is not for children, but thinks that it should be in the young adult section, which is generally for children 12 to 18 years of age. That makes no sense. And if it's very clear, then why does the publisher's description say that it's for teens and tweens? Furthermore, if it's not for children, then why is there any outrage that the book is being removed from K-12 school libraries? Well, you know why. The next book on the ALA's list is Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. They claim that the book is being challenged for profanity and claimed to be sexually explicit. First, proper grammar would dictate that the book should be called Earl, the Dying Girl, and Me, but whatever. Second, I would like to read a bit from the book so you can be the judge as to whether or not it's appropriate for all ages. Are you going to eat her p? I'm going to eat her p. Do you even know how to eat p? Papa Gaines never sat you down and said, "Son, one day you're going to have to eat the p." No, but he did teach me how to eat a p. I would teach you some p eating technique, but it's a little complicated. Son, I don't have time for that. I got 20 p over here that I need to eat. I'm on p deadline. I'm talking about p. I got a little honey mustard over here, a little Heinz 57, and a whole lot of p. Yo, Pa Gaines drove me down to Whole Foods, so if you need some funky Vlasic pickle relish for that p, just holla. So because of the book's questionable content, which includes nearly 100 instances of the F word, some school systems, like Greenville Public Schools in Michigan, have kept the book available in its high school libraries, but not in their middle school or elementary school libraries. In response to the decision by Greenville Public Schools, the author of the book, Jesse Andrews, wrote on Twitter, "I used to find these attempts to ban Me and Earl and the Dying Girl funny, just because they were so ridiculous. It's a potty-mouthed book about how hard it is to process pain and grief, and how hard it is to grow up. The idea that this harms anyone is beyond stupid. But the reality is that it wasn't banned. It's just not available in their elementary school or middle school libraries. Again, it's still available in the high school library. And if it was banned, you couldn't get it anywhere." In other places, like the Willard Public School System in Missouri, however, the book has been removed from school libraries entirely. One parent reacted saying, "Even though some of the material may be mature and sensitive, it's a very small portion, and the greater scheme of the book is positivity, inclusion, and things like that. Only a small portion of the book is inappropriate for kids. Stop making a big deal about it, you prudes." I don't like the fact that they're now making these decisions for every kid in the district, regardless of what their parents want their kids to be exposed to. Then as a parent, you can make the individual decision to either buy the book on Amazon or borrow the book from the Springfield Greene County Library. Or you could go online and borrow a digital copy. So if you want your child to read it, it requires minimal effort. Next on the ALA's list is Crank by Ellen Hopkins. The ALA states that it's being challenged for drug use and claimed to be sexually explicit. Again, claimed to be, even though the book contains several passages depicting sexual encounters, including a rape. Why can't the American Library Association be honest about a book's content? Again, you know why. Now, the argument is that Crank is supposedly meant to be a cautionary tale about how drug addiction can ruin your life, and that might be. But not every parent wants their child to read a book about everything from meth and cocaine abuse, multiple personality disorder, prostitution, and teen pregnancy. Next on the list is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Allow me to read a passage. "His tongue swept my mouth again, in time to the finger that he slipped inside of me. My hips undulated, demanding more, craving the fullness of him, and his growl reverberated in my chest as he added another finger." And that's one of the more tamer passages. And yet the ALA states that it's being challenged over claims of being sexually explicit. A Court of Mist and Fury, which was written for lonely sexed-up housewives, is absolutely 100% not appropriate for children. Yet the ALA is outraged that this graphic content is being removed from school libraries. Why do they care so much? I mean, come on, you know why. Next on the list is Out of Darkness by Ashley Hope Perez. The ALA claims that the book is being targeted because of depictions of abuse and claims that it's sexually explicit. There's that word again, claimed. Now, I'm not going to read a passage from the book, but I will read a tweet from Andrew Carr, the book's editor. To be clear, Out of Darkness has scenes of consensual sexual intimacy as well as scenes of violent sexual assault, but it's clearly a book about America and our complicated, deadly relationship with race, and all such scenes forward that purpose. And yet the book is claimed as young adult fiction for 8th to 12th graders. I'm sorry, but that's complete nonsense. Next on the list is The Absolutely True Story of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. The book contains sexual themes, foul language, alcoholism, racial stereotypes, and mocks Christianity. But with all that said, out of all the books on the list, it would probably be the one most likely to survive a challenge. Now, while it's pretty tame compared to a lot of books in the young adult category, parents should absolutely have the right to challenge it from being included as part of a school's curriculum. Next on the list is Lawn Boy by Jonathan Iveson. In an interview with the Washington Post, Iveson said that he never meant for his book to be placed in school libraries, and he was surprised when the American Library Association gave Lawn Boy an award in 2019 for its appeal to teens. And he had every right to be surprised, because the content of Lawn Boy, well, it's a very adult book. So how did it end up in school libraries? Iveson believes that some librarians who chose the novel did so because of the award, and he says that if any recommended it to lower or middle schoolers, they probably confused it with the children's book Lawn Boy by Gary Paulson. Oh, I think I see what happened. The librarians who nominated it are stupid and confused Lawn Boy with Lawn Boy. And the ALA was like, this is a great book for teens. Despite the fact that Iveson admits that nobody below a teenager is ready for that book, it's got a lot of adult stuff, the Washington Post, as of December of last year, found that out of 35 challenges against Longboy, it remains available in 25 out of 35 school districts. So there are librarians across the country who ordered the wrong book, who won't admit that they made a mistake, and are willing to die on that hill. It's almost like some librarians and school board members and the American Library Association care more about books than the children that read them. Sad, really. Next on the list is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. The ALA claims that it's challenged because of depiction of sexual abuse, LGBTQIA+ content, drug use, profanity, and again says that it's claimed to be sexually explicit. Brad and Patrick went into Patrick's room. They had sex for the first time that night. I don't want to go into detail about it because it's pretty private stuff, but I will say that Brad assumed the role of the girl in terms of where you put things. Brad started to cry really hard. He had been drinking a lot and getting really stoned. The book also includes drug use, underage drinking, and a pretty detailed passage regarding a date rape. And if all that's not enough of a reason for you, here's the book's most famous quote. "And in that moment, I swear we were infinite." What pretentious bullshit. The next book on ALA's list is Looking for Alaska by John Green. I won't read a passage from the book's text, but I will read part of a conversation with the author where he defends the book's content. The language in the oral is extremely clinical and distant and unsensual. The word penis is used rather than member or hot rod or whatever else you'd find in romance novels. Oh good! My main worry was that children would misinterpret the message behind it. It seemed to me pretty obvious that I was arguing against vapid sexual encounters in which no one has any fun and celebrating the underappreciated virtues of super hot kissing, in which everyone keeps their clothes on. Some censors clearly feel otherwise, although most of them never read the BJ scene in context. Oh, it's okay for a child to read it because of the context. Got it. Next up is Flamer by Mike Curato. In short, this graphic novel has an illustration of a 14-year-old main character watching adult content and then doing things, you know what I mean. And then later, it shows him attempting to unalive himself. Those two elements alone make this book inappropriate. And yet the American Library Association will go out of its way to defend it. Because again, you know why. Next is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. Stephanie Hayes, a columnist at the Tampa Bay Times, writes, "To be sure, The Bluest Eye proves a difficult read. It tells the story of Pecola Breedlove, a quiet, sensitive black girl growing up after the Great Depression. Tormented for her dark skin, she formulates a concept of beauty from Eurocentric baby dolls and Shirley Temple. She believes that if she could have blue eyes, all of her problems would be solved. But her life is a desperate one, filled with abuse from almost everyone she knows and rape at the hands of her alcoholic father." And there it is. That's the reason why there have been so many challenges against The Bluest Eye. But Stephanie Hayes says it's something else. The Bluest Eye, published in 1970, is the latest casualty in a wave of American anti-intellectualism hitting particularly hard in Florida. But that statement is intellectually dishonest. It's not the latest casualty. In fact, The Bluest Eye has been challenged over its very adult content for the last 25 years. And Hayes isn't the only one being dishonest, as the American Library Association says that the book is being challenged over equity, diversity, and inclusion content, which is just straight up bullshit. Next is All Boys Aren't Blue, a memoir manifesto by George M. Johnson. Johnson, who is non-binary and uses they-them pronouns, shares stories from their life in the autobiographical book, including difficult ones involving sexual assault and racism. Johnson says it's important to be honest with young readers. Except that Johnson's honesty is not appropriate for young readers. As we began texting one another, it quickly escalated from a friendly conversation to an X-rated one. This was fine for me, except I wasn't quite sure who I was supposed to be in the bedroom. He didn't know I was a virgin, and I did my best to act dominant like my favorite star. I was an actor, and this was my movie. And I remember the condom was blue and flavored like cotton candy. Johnson tells NPR, anytime you write a book where you write about your truth, there are going to be people who want to silence that truth. In other words, Johnson is saying, let your children read my memoir manifesto, you bigot. And again, the American Library Association can't be honest. They state the challengers of the book claim that there's explicit content when they should be saying that it definitely does. The ALA clearly has an agenda, and you need to fight back hard against it. And last on the list is the now infamous Genderqueer, a graphic novel by Maya Kobebe. First, there's this page where the book's protagonist is online, considering buying a special toy to use. Then there's this panel containing the URL to an adult website. Then there's this page featuring talk about having relations with another person, showing the adult content of their texts. And then there's the book's most notorious image, which I have blurred the crap out of to meet community guidelines. And if you have to blur it out on YouTube, it's not appropriate to be seen by children. But watch the woman from the American Library Association try and downplay it and act like this is some important piece of literature.
It is a graphic novel, so certainly it's more in your face, but it's not intended to titillate. It's intended to provide a window onto one person's experience, not knowing their gender identity and needing to explore that.
So it's okay to show this to children because it's not hot. That's the excuse they're really going with.
We're seeing challenges primarily to books that elevate the voices of those who've been traditionally marginalized in society, particularly books about gay, queer, transgender persons, or persons of color, Black persons. Really a real effort to censor any narrative that challenges the status quo, that elevates the voices of alternative groups.
Nope. It has nothing to do with shutting down marginalized voices. It strictly has to do with calling out content that is objectively not appropriate for children. But that's where the left always goes. When they can't properly win an argument, they'll just accuse you of being a racist and a bigot. Hopefully this video, with all the reasoning and all the examples, will help you in the effort to shut that narrative down. Anyway, that's it for now. Follow me on Twitter at Don't Walk Run. Be sure that you're still subscribed to the channel. And as always, I hope to see you next time, if there is next time.